Alright, and this part is called Screw the Doctrine, Leave Your Vehicles Outside of Law Range. Soviet doctrine says the BTRs are supposed to advance with the infantry behind them. That's not really good enough. What you should really do is, once you get inside the accurate range of a law, which is below 300 meters to be sure, and it could be a bit longer with the MAW, but you're going to be facing mostly these. Once you get to within law range of where you suspect there might be infantry, so whether that's trees or buildings or whatever, detach your BTRs from your infantry and put them in some trees or something. Put them in some trees, or if there's a building, you can, put them like kind of behind the building. This doesn't look like a building, but you get what I'm saying. Behind the building to where they can kind of see in a keyhole position out. That way they're not exposed from every angle. And make sure not to get within that 300 meters. And you can always press L and use the line of sight tool to find out. Alright, so Soviet vehicles in this era are mostly blind in comparison to their NATO counterparts, especially when you're moving and your NATO counterparts are stationary. So what you might want to do sometimes, although this is kind of messed up, and really I recommend trying other options like suppressing them with artillery and outflanking them, and we'll get to that, but what you might want to do sometimes is send one vehicle up to scout as bait. If you're lucky, they'll spot the enemy and you can maybe pop smoke or get behind a tree or something, and then you'll be fine, like get concealed, and then you'll be able to call in your fire mission. But what is likely to happen is they'll get blown up. But if you have infantry nearby, like I have some here in a building and in some trees, that's my wonderful drawing there, then they can spot this bait vehicle. Hopefully it's something cheap like, BRDM or an old BTR. They can spot him getting shot, spot the muzzle flash, and then they'll know at least about where the enemies are. And then you can call in some fire missions to suppress those enemies that fired on your guys. Now, another cool thing you can do sometimes is if you know there's two tanks over there and you have an approach, you can send some infantry, maybe with like a tank or two or an IFE to support them, something like that. And you can do a flanking infantry assault if the terrain permits it. So if there's like buildings or a hill, some type of terrain, you can come around and pretty often they'll be in a stretch of open area between you and the enemy that you want to flank. So you want to get some smoke screen laid down, so you'll have, you can zero in your mortars to put smoke here and then fire them when your infantry gets close. When they get ready to break their cover and make the dash, you want to use smoke, because even though the enemy vehicles, many of them can see through smoke, but a lot of them still can't see through smoke. But the infantry cannot see through smoke. It's not like they have javelins yet or anything like that, so you can still blind them. So if there's infantry covering these vehicles, you'll be able to blind them with some smoke and get your infantry in there to destroy the enemy's vehicles if the artillery fire mission hasn't destroyed them already. But like I was going to say earlier, ideally you won't have to use a bait vehicle. Ideally you can do this, you can close the gap and do your reconnaissance with infantry on foot first, because they're going to be a lot better and a lot less costly if you lose them. Something very important to remember when you're doing your terrain analysis for your attacks, that the enemies prefer the edge of the forest in a line formation, so they're going to be kind of parallel to each other, side by side. They don't necessarily have to be facing the direction you're attacking from. They're more likely to be in most cases, but they are going to be usually side by side, usually with like a gap in between them, like maybe one tile gap or whatever. Like they prefer the best line of sight over deep concealment. Like a human player may decide to go for more of like a deep ambush with, giving up some line of sight for that. But remember, tow missiles cannot deploy inside buildings. So they're likely to be in the forest or next to a building outside of it. They're never going to be inside of the building. So if you're planning fire missions, plan them on the edge of the healed wood line with the best line of sight. So that would be like this whole area. Don't worry about wasting artillery shooting at all this shit. Now there are exceptions. If this area also has a good line of sight over some other objectives, let me see if I can scroll up a little bit, then yeah, you're going to want to shoot at this too. That's something I learned the hard way recently. Now, usually you can expect your AI to be defending the objectives most of the time, especially if they're closer to where you start out. Exceptions to this can be if there's an ambush or a counterattack that will be outside of the objective area. Usually these will be hinted in the mission briefing, so make sure you read through that thoroughly. Usually you can be pretty sure that the objective areas are pretty good to be laying down some artillery. There's a lot of buildings. You're going to want to save that artillery barrage until it would be useful as suppression, because you're probably not going to get a whole lot of kills if they're all in buildings. You can still get some, especially if you know what buildings. Like if there's only 2 or 3 buildings there, you can destroy those buildings by making smaller fire missions. And another thing to note is in the campaign, I'm playing the Soviet campaign right now, their AI does not put the recon always in the no man's land. So like I expended resources suppressing the potential recon positions and wasted time on trying to clear them in the no man's land when they didn't even put them in the no man's land. So that's just something to remember for future reference. Like I said, the ambush units don't always go near the objective. They go in more advantageous positions. Most of the time, your enemy AI is going to be placed around the objective or in it, like pretty close to it. Unless you see something like this in the mission description where it says right here, be alert for potential ambushes utilizing the TOW anti-tank guided missile system. That, or if they mention there's going to be a counterattack or something like that, or something kind of hinting at it, then you'll know they may be somewhere else at some point. Just something to keep in mind. Now here's a little tip: if you have always play enemy sounds on in your options menu, you can triangulate the artillery sound and sometimes other sounds, and then plan a little probe attack with a few vehicles or like 1 or 2 APCs with infantry in them to find and kill it. Or you can send an air asset over there, such as like a helicopter or something, or go ahead and plan yourself a fire mission in that general area to kind of suppress their artillery. This can be pretty useful, albeit it's a little bit cheesy, but you know, something to note.